Welcome back, everybody, to another set of adventures from Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log. Today we're going to go through our second mission. I first off want to start out by saying thanks to everybody who watched the first mission, the Graveyard of Bukitsa Mu. Got incredible feedback from it, lots of love, appreciated the number of subscribers coming in, especially considering where the channel had started out. I'm very pleased with how things have progressed, and suffice it to say, it was enough attention that I will be, at least for the time being, attempting to do one mission a week, and I'll probably stick to the same general format as I did the last time, one episode per act. So we can expect basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday is what I'm currently expecting. However, that can change as life gets in the way. And should my schedule be a little complicated to handle one a week, I will certainly endeavor to do at least every other week. So today we're going to continue with the adventures of the U.S.S. Jemison and our first officer character, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Paulsen. When we left off in the last episode, we learned that she was a little wary of how she had reacted to the situation on Bukitsa Mu. And it's now been a handful of weeks. So let's go ahead and dive into the first officer's log. First officer's log, Stardate 2181.2. We've just finished a bit of shore leave on Starbase 12 before heading out to fleet exercises in the space between Nausicaa and Maluria. The Jemison has been assigned to what is being referred to as the Malurian Fleet. I got the impression that the only reason we were invited was because of the fact that Captain Malik holds the record for most encounters with the Malurians. After the business on Bukitsa Mu, I half expected the admiralty to pull us from the exercises. Still, I'm determined to make a good showing of myself. The specific system where the fleet exercises are to take place has some navigational challenges, and I've been working with the helm officers from each shift to make sure we're ready. And that's where we are going to begin. Now, I don't know what type of navigational challenges they are. I don't know much of anything on that front, but we're going to use the probability matrices as defined in the back of the book, in the appendices, to kind of generate that as we go along. Now, in the last mission, I should say, I showed at one point the basically everything that I had rolled beforehand based on the probability tables, and I'm going to do that up front this time. So this is what we are dealing with. We know it's a defense tactical maneuvers with allies mission type, and we've already covered that in the first officer's log. As far as the incident and the theme, the crew is going to have to save a maroon shuttle at one point. We're going to have to bring a complication in, and that complication has to do with an infiltrator. I've got some thoughts on that. Potentially a spy on board the Jemison for one of the Federation ships taking part in the exercise. And lastly, we start off, our first encounter is going to have to do with an eccentric collector on his pleasure cruise. Exactly how we're going to deal with that, I don't yet know, but we are starting off on board the ship, and this is going to be a good opportunity for us to explore the ship itself a little more. In the last session, I think we were on board ship for all of about a minute and a half as Paulsen and the away team beamed down to Bukitsa Mu to get to the crashed ship that ended up being so important to the plot. And I will also say one last thing before we dive into this. If you want to catch up on any of the previous missions, I have a playlist that'll be linked in the comments below, and you, at the very least, can find it from my channel homepage. Also, if you want to see more of this stuff and want to make sure you don't miss out, subscribing is the best way to do that. The last time I did YouTube, you didn't have to worry about the bell, but there's a bell down there somewhere as well, over here probably, that will let you get notifications when I post something new. But we're going to go ahead and get into this now. So the camera begins on an opening shot, an establishing shot of the U.S.S. Jemison in space, likely in a collection of other ships. In fact, we see the Jemison next to the U.S.S. Swiftshore, the U.S.S. Hornet, the U.S.S. Hosho, and the U.S.S. Hawking. All of them are Federation starships of varying classes and designs, and they're all in a rather tight formation, kind of in a holding pattern, as it were. It's at this point that the camera would cut to the bridge, and we would see, we'll say Commander Paulsen is in the captain's chair at the moment. The captain is off in his quarters, probably preparing either that... Actually, no. Let's say that the captain is on the USS Swiftshore under command of Captain Holtz, and is taking part in the pre-exercise tactical conversations that are sure to be taking place. So he's taken a shuttle over, along with the captains of the Hornet, Hosho, and Hawking. Unintentionally, a lot of H's there. I generated all of those names randomly. So, Commander Paulsen is sitting in the captain's chair. We see the various crew members, Ensign Fiona Smith sitting at helm, Lieutenant DeWitt sitting at the science station, Chief Engineer obviously not on the bridge, nor is the Chief Medical Officer. But I think you'd probably... Actually, no. Tactical Officer is going to be involved in that tactics conversation as well. So at the moment, the only recognizable main cast members on the bridge are Ensign Fiona Smith and Lieutenant Eric DeWitt. It's at this point that the current communications officer, unnamed Redshirt, alerts Commander Paulsen that there's an incoming hail. On screen, she says, and suddenly up pops a figure of unidentified species. Let's see. I think there might be a good species table in here. I don't remember. So let's jump down to the appendix and look at the probability matrices. Gotta make that a little bigger. My eyes are not what they used to be, especially looking at a screen. Species, special, spectral. I don't see spacefaring civilization. We can look at 273. No, that's not going to help us here. We'll take a look at page 91 and see if they've got a nice... Yes, random species by year. That's a much better spot to look for it. So let's go ahead and roll a d20 and see what species our exotic pilot it comes from. They are Edosian. So Edosians, for those of you who may not recall, we've only seen them in one series. That would be the original Star Trek animated series from the 70s. Lieutenant Eric's is an Edosian. So we see an Edosian pop up on screen, and Commander Paulsen kind of just looks quizzically at him. And he says, Captain, what a pleasure to make your acquaintance. It's such a delight. And you see, I believe Edosians are well known for having 3 arms and 3 legs. So he kind of clasps 2 of his hands together while the third hand is messing around on the console in front of him. Well, I am most curious to hear what is going on. So many Federation starships. Commander Paulsen, probably a little taken aback by this gentle being's demeanor. So, taking part in fleet exercises, I would recommend you steer clear for the next several days. Our weapons, of course, will be on low power, but you never know. Getting in the way of 10 Federation starships is never a good idea. Oh, but Captain... I think you misunderstand. I am here to meet with someone from your Federation specifically. I have a bit of a proposition for you. Perhaps some sort of deal can be made. Well, Paulsen, probably not sure exactly what to make of it. Certainly not this kind of deal. At this era in the Federation, money's always a weird thing in Star Trek. So, it both exists and doesn't exist depending on who you ask. I am going on the notion that money does exist, but it's not really used within the Federation, as far as between Federation members. So having this, I believe Adosians are Federation members. I don't know for sure. I'm going to assume that they are, considering there is an Adosian in Starfleet. So, Commander Paulsen would say something along the lines of, well, why don't you tell me what you've got to offer? Well, I am something of a collector, and I came across a, I guess you could call it a log buoy, and perhaps Starfleet is interested in acquiring it from us. And I think this is where we're going to get to our first task. So this will be as Commander Paulsen attempts to wheedle further information out or even convince this Adosian to hand it over. Which way do we want to go with this? We could try and have her intimidate the Adosian into just straight up giving it to them. That would be a presence security, but I think we want to be a little more diplomatic with it. So we'll do a presence command. 15, we need 1 success. Let's go ahead and roll our dice here. That is, in fact, 3 successes. I rolled a 14 and a 1. These dice have been kind to me. So let me go ahead and get out a momentum chip. We're once again, because I didn't plan ahead, we're going to use my Viking coin as a momentum, and we'll use my 50-cent piece as a threat if or when that shows up. So, she is successful. She would say something along the lines of, or would try to convince the Adosian that handing over the log buoy would put him in good graces of Starfleet and the Federation at large, and she will make sure that his ship is logged in their system as being friendly and worth talking to. I think that would be a pretty good trade, and obviously we had a success there, so that's fantastic. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to mark that in our mission tracker as a success. Beautiful. Okay, and you can probably see, based on the title card on screen, what I have named this episode, and again, that's based on the incident and theme that I rolled ahead of the session. Maroon shuttle, and their goal is to save it. Now, we know, first off, points to you if you get the reference in the title, but we know that there is some kind of log buoy that now is being transported into the shuttle bay. The question is that a Federation ship, or does it belong to some other species? So let's scroll down to the probability matrix. Here we go. And is it a Federation ship that has crashed? We are in Federation space. I don't have a handy map to pull up. I've got a physical copy that came with the board cube set back in 2017 when this game first came out. Let's see if I can unfold this massive map here in a timely fashion. Very difficult to see anything on screen, but we are in Federation space. It's kind of in between the Romulan Empire and the Klingon Empire as far as locating it there, but rather heavily in Federation space. I will try and find a digital copy of that map for the next time I need it. So I'm going to say it's probable that it is a Federation ship. Not entirely likely, but probable. So let's go ahead and roll. We're looking for a 1 to 15 for Federation, 16 to 20 for other. That's a 20. Okay, so it is non-Federation ship, and that actually brings us to an interesting point. If it's a non-Federation ship, we can say that the standard Federation protocols for listening to log buoys and you know the communication protocols and transmit protocols that exist therein are not functional for this particular log buoy. So we're going to get to our second task a little bit sooner than I had anticipated. How do we decrypt that log buoy? And I think we're going to bring up one of our NPCs. Now, this is something I've learned in the last week since I did the last mission. This game is designed to operate basically however you want. So by default, they suggest that you have your main character do everything. Since you're running the entire game, you can set it up so that you don't ever have to worry about an NPC making a check. But they also suggest that if you want to do something different, if you want to pull rules in from the original game, or if you want to kind of tweak things to your heart's content, you are welcome to do that. I like having the NPC characters, the other bridge officers, work in concert with everyone else. So I'm going to continue to have them roll for various things and treat it like that. I think that's just my style. Both as a GM in general, I like to bring in other characters. But also for this, I think it makes more sense, at least as far as how I envision the game. So, in this case, let's bring in Lieutenant Diana Reardon, who I don't think we have seen before. She's in her late 20s, has been probably passed over for promotion once. That's why she's kind of on a lowly Shepherd-class ship, but is a fully competent Starfleet engineer. Now, I didn't roll stats for her, so I'm just going to take a look at some generic stats that I've got available. We'll say she's got an 11 in control, but I don't think this is a control task. She does have a 4 in engineering, so we'll say it's probably a reason engineering task to try and get information out. I could also accept, if I were running this game, I would also accept something like reason science to try and get through the so-called language barrier. But I'm going to go with reason engineering for this. And her reason's reasonable. I'll call it a 10 with a control of 11. Makes good sense to me as far as an engineer is concerned. So we're looking for a 14 as far as the target number. So let's go ahead and roll. A 9 and a 14. Now again, in general, we would generate one new momentum, but we already have one, and 1 is the cap on this. So we do have a success for our second task. Fantastic. And I'm, again, marking it in 2 places. Marking it on my printed copy of the mission tracker, as well as my copy digitally here. Fantastic. Okay, so Lieutenant Reardon is able to decrypt the logs coming out of the log buoy. And maybe we say that the buoy has been damaged and is not in its best condition, which is one of the reasons why a little more control had to be in place. She was routing new cabling through, kind of working through the system with a little more dexterity required than pure reason would be. Okay, so she has decrypted the log. Now the real question is, what alien species, what non-Federation species does this belong to? And I think we have an easy answer ahead of us. Is this ship Malurian? I think that's let's go to the probability matrix. And in reality, we are fairly close to Maluria. We're also fairly close to Nausicaa. Why don't we say it's, as this is a Malurian, an exercise specifically to kind of protect against and plan against Malurian, shall we say, what's the right word? Malurian interference in this sector. I think it's more probable than not that this is a Malurian ship that has crashed. So, let's say that it's 1 to 15 Malurian, 16 to 20 is Nausicaan. That is a 9, so it is in fact a Malurian ship. Now, Commander Paulsen has no experience with the Malurians. I think it's improbable she's got experience with the Malurians, and the dice holds that out. So the log reads kind of a standard SOS. It gives... well, we do need a third task in this set here. And I'd like Commander Paulsen to roll another check at some point. So, if it's just her and Lieutenant Reardon in the engineering, in the shuttle bay, essentially, I think let's add in the a minor complication, and this is one that I'm choosing to add as opposed to one that the dice rolls are requiring. That the log has been decrypted, but it is damaged. So in that instance, Commander Paulsen, maybe she's trying to defragment the data. And I think her reason science would be the same as... would be the same as Lieutenant Reardon's. I think Lieutenant Reardon only has maybe a 2 in science, but her reason's a 10. Commander Paulsen, of course, as you can see on your screen, has a 12 total, so would be comparable there. And as someone who's studied more of the science side of things, we might as well go with Commander Paulsen for this test. So we're looking for a 12. Let's see what we can do. That is 1 success, an 11 and a 17, cutting it close. So Commander Paulsen manages to reconstruct the log, has seen that it was a Malurian ship. The SOS is not much more specific than that. They've gone down, and previously their coordinates were corrupted, and they were only able to get the rough sector, but now they're able to narrow in on a specific point. It is at this point that we want to start kind of accelerating things. This is supposed to take place during a fleet action, and I'm well aware of this fact. I'm also aware that at some point we're going to need some conflict to come in here as far as writing an episode of Star Trek. If it was just them leaving the fleet action and heading off, that's not particularly interesting. We want to have them have some sort of choice they have to make that complicates things. So it's at this point that we'll say that Commander Paulsen is hailed by the bridge and told to return to the bridge post haste. And this is a familiar voice to the audience. Captain Malik has called for her to return to the bridge. Okay. So she's returning to the bridge. Maybe she's got a pad with her now, one of those big, lovely and clunky TOS pads that has the information from the Malurian distress signal. So she walks onto the bridge carrying this pad and takes her station kind of sitting along the back wall. And the captain turns to her and says, "All right, Commander, we are going to be beginning our fleet exercises in about 5 minutes. Stations, please." And we cut to then a voice coming over the comms from a Starfleet ship that reads on screen as the U.S.S. Newcastle. And this is a Nimitz-class vessel. And I think... I don't have the page written down, but we can find it real quick. Starship, let's see. I think that they've got it listed by era in here. So we want to go with original series. Alright, I'll find it real quick. It's after that. After the character development. So it is a Nimitz-class ship. Here we go. Those of you who have seen Star Trek Discovery, this is the same as the... I can't remember the name of the ship, but the main admiral that we see in the Battle of the Binary Stars is in a Nimitz-class ship, I believe. Pretty sure that's accurate. But this is the ship, the U.S.S. Newcastle. And the voice on the communication says, "All ships in fleet, this is Fleet Captain Iris Holland. Our exercises begin in 30 seconds. Please recall that we are under complete communications blackout as per negotiated. Set your weapons to low power, and good luck." And there we are. So we're now in a communications blackout, which is going to complicate things even further. And again, this is something that I'm adding to the story to set up a more interesting and colorful episode for our production here. And Commander Paulsen would turn to Captain Malik and say, "Captain, I was unaware of our intent to be in communications blackout." And he would nod and say, "Yes, we're keeping that under wraps as a surprise. It's something for our crews to deal with on the fly." She would then add, "Well, Captain, we, shortly before you shuttled back over, learned from a log buoy that a Malurian ship has gone down." And she would list the sector. I don't have the exact numbers handy, but I can make something up. In Sector 715, we have seen from our preparations for this exercise that there are some navigational challenges specifically in Sector 715, sir. He would turn to her and kind of swivel in his chair. "Well, Commander, for the moment they're going to have to deal with it on their own. These exercises are far too important for us to leave on a what could be a wild goose chase. The Malurians have been known to do that, as I'm sure you're aware." She nods, and the fleet exercises begin. We would see, this would be a great opportunity for a beauty shot of 5 Federation ships kind of fanning out and kind of getting into a formation. And we'll go with a diamond formation, or the flying V, with the Swiftsure at the front, flanked immediately by the Hornet on the left, the Hosho on the right, and then the Jemison and the Hawking kind of evening things out. It's also pretty clear that the Jemison is one of the lesser ships in this exercise, which should match with what we've heard from the first officer's log in the beginning. And I think this will be a fun opportunity to do our first bit of starship combat. I need to get back to that page. Actually, I've got it written down on my printout. And yes, I do print things out. It is handy in this particular case. I don't have to find the right page. I can just hit the right buttons. All right, so we're going to just do a first salvo sort of thing in our fleet exercise. The Jemison gets ordered to kind of go in for a flanking maneuver and cut off one of the other Federation ships. In this case, let's just call it the U.S.S. Clark. And Captain Malik would say, "Captain Highland of the Clark is well known for trying bold maneuvers. Let's get in front of her and see if we can't head her off at the pass." Okay, fantastic. Let's do a ship-to-ship combat with the Clark. I'm going to do this on a scratch piece of paper. And this is, again, just a very basic ship combat sort of thing. We have hit tracks based on scale. The Clark is of a similar scale, so we're going to have 2 by default plus 3 for each of them, so we should have 5. And in this case, because it is a fleet exercise, we'll say that the Clark has orders to kind of veer off after taking a certain number of hits, what would be damage to the ship. So, we've created our hit tracks. They're both at a 5. We are going to choose our ship here. I've dropped my dice again. There it goes. Blends in with the carpet. And in this case, because let's see who has the initiative. Is it going to be the Jemison 1 to 10, not 0 to 10, 1 to 10, or is it going to be the Clark at an 11 to 20? That's a 1, so the Jemison is going to have initiative. So let's go ahead here We're going to perform our task. That's a page 199. And I believe, well, that's not helpful. I think it was 214. I passed it. There it is. In this case, I believe for ship-to-ship combat, it is weapons and security. So for the Jemison, that's a 10 that we're looking for. We have 1 hit, and I think what we're going to do is spend our momentum to add a second hit to that. And I think we can do that. Yep, add 1 hit to the opposition. Fantastic. So Jemison is the first line. Clark is the second. So our momentum has been spent. And we have 2 hits on the Clark. Now, one of the fun things we can do in this fleet exercise is go to our ship probability matrix, ship damage probability matrix, and see what systems have been hit, quote unquote, in these 2 salvos. So the first one is actually both hits are just to the general structure, which is, I'm sure, a disappointment for Captain Malik. He would much prefer that. I rolled a 14 and a 16. He'd much prefer that the hits got off on the Clark's weapons. But 2 hits to the structure. Maybe they've taken a hull breach in a part of their ship. Again, a simulated hull breach. It'd be a small one. Their shields would still be up at this point, at least metaphorically. Okay, so that was the Jemison's task. Tracks are not full. Check for critical damage. What does that mean? Let's see. At hits, scale critical damage always results to the affected system. That's right. Okay, so once we hit their scale, the 3, they have taken critical damage. Each hit beyond scale also inflicts critical damage. Ah, okay. So we only do actual system damage on a critical result. So it's only after we hit their scale. So their structure hasn't taken any damage because their shields are still up. And they're mostly weathering the storm. Okay, that's good to know. So each hit beyond the scale as well as the second hit beyond the scale. Cool. Okay. So no critical damage as of yet. But at this point, let's see. I give it a 50-50 shot that the Clark stays in this. That was a big opening salvo. Okay, they are going to stay in this fight. The Clark is a slightly bigger ship, so instead of a weapons security of a 10, they've got an 11. Actually, no, I said it was a small, same size ship. I don't think the Clark is particularly tactical either. Their captain just has a tactical mind. So we'll just go with the same stats for the Jemison for the moment. So they're going to make their shot. That is a 13 and a 19, and we were looking for a 10. So they take a 3rd hit. As we look at the flow chart here, perform a task on a failure, they apply an additional hit. So we have filled up their scale. At hits equals scale, they have taken a critical damage. I'm going to re-roll on that chart from before. 13 might have been structure anyways. Yes, 13 is structure anyways. So, none of their systems take any serious damage, but they have taken a hull breach. So I will mark not system, structure. Structure, that's the right word. And at this point, the Clark veers back towards the main body of the battle as of this point. So we're going to call that a victory for the U.S.S. Jemison, and our 4th on our mission tracker. And again, exactly how I run this might not be the way that you choose to run this, might not be, and probably is not the way that others run their Captain's Log adventures. You just got to find what works for you. And now we have one more task before we get into the second act. And it's at this point that we need the Malurian shuttle to become an urgent situation as opposed to just an oddity. And I think what we can say, and I probably should have included this earlier around that second or third task, was that the part of the information was that this was a crash from not hours ago. It was not particularly recent, and if some collector had been the one to get this information, I think this is implied that our Edosian collector hadn't just gotten this log buoy, that he'd been kind of seeking out Starfleet in the general area for a little bit now. But I think we can say it was days or maybe a week ago as opposed to months. So it's at this point that I think we're going to say the communications officer of the Jemison picks up a transmission on an emergency channel that's badly garbled, but the only things that come out of it are the name of the Malurian ship that we've already heard. And actually, let's roll for a name. That sounds like fun. Probability matrices. Name generators. Alright, so let's make it a 3-syllable name. We need to roll to see what progression we're using. That's a 20 CDBA. So I'm going to roll 3 dice. I just happen to have a third. It's a little clunkier, but we'll use it. That's a 6, a 13, and a 16. Let's try it in that order. 6, C, Jin. D on the 13 would be Ali. And 16A, Jinali Bay. That works. So that would be, and I'd probably include like an apostrophe. So we'll say that the Jinali Bay has been, or the Jinali B has been, is the name of the ship that's crashed. And I'm going to write that down. Jinali B. And that's a hard E. So I'm even going to put an accent over that E so I remember the pronunciation. That's the name of our Malurian ship. And one thing that I have improved on from last time, I am actually remembering to take notes on my scratch paper, as opposed to the last time where I immediately forgot the name of the god that we generated in Act 1. Fantastic. So this communication has come in. It's sounding much more urgent. There's probably some bits of this hail that indicates that somebody on the crew is injured. They need help desperately. Given particular distances to target and the various sector that they're coming from, our communications officer says that this message is only an hour old. Fantastic. All right. So now we have a conundrum. Do they immediately leave the fleet exercises? Do they ignore the communications blackouts? Or do they... And I think those are the two options. The captain is not about to let someone in distress stay in distress. So let's get back to our probability matrix. It's just a few pages, so I'll scroll the old-fashioned way. Does he just take off, or does he break communication silence? I think the letter of the law for this fleet exercise is not to break communication silence. So I think it's more probable than not that he just takes off. And first off, that's a more entertaining thing to happen. If you're watching a Star Trek episode and suddenly the captain says, "No, we can't tell anyone, we're in a communications blackout," even though it's a fleet exercise, that's dramatic. Suddenly you've got all 9 other ships wondering, what is Captain Malik doing? Is this some bold plan? Alright, so I'm going to say it's probable that he just takes off. 1 to 15. That's a 14. So the Jemison is going to take off and begin to make her way to the proper sector. Now, one of the things that we need to take care of is figuring out what the navigational challenges are. And I know that there are some stellar phenomena. Here we go. The spatial phenomena table. Let's go ahead and roll a... actually, we're going to roll 2d20. And I know we've got 5 options for each, but I want to make sure... We'll roll 1 and I can re-roll it. I wanted to make sure that whatever we come up with fits relatively well with our story. And first off, I have no idea what an Ember Star is. It's not a phrase I'm familiar with either in real astrophysics, of which I have a master's degree, or Star Trek. So whatever that is, if we roll it, we're going to have to come up with something interesting. A 3. Good, no Ember Star in the way. Navigational challenge. Could go with Class 1 gravitational waves. That would be interesting. In which case, maybe we make it a set of orbiting binary, maybe a binary black hole and a neutron star. And of course, they're orbiting each other so quickly that they're literally disturbing space-time, particularly the space part of that equation, and generating gravitational waves. So yeah, let's do that. There's a planet, maybe, or something that, for whatever reason, the Malurians were headed to. Maybe there's a rogue moon. We can combine options B and E. And suddenly, we've got ourselves a complicated navigational problem for the Jemison to face. Now, our character is an excellent pilot. And I think we're going to have Commander Paulsen take the helm. And this is going to be our 5th task for the act. Commander Paulsen is going to attempt to navigate. Maybe she's not a better pilot than our actual helmsman. That would be, of course, Ensign Fiona Smith. But Fiona Smith is only 22. She is not particularly experienced. She has just come out of Starfleet Academy. Of course, she's trained against gravitational waves. That would be something standard for a Starfleet officer who's going to be a helmsman. But in this case, Class 1 of something generally implies... that's actually an interesting question. I don't know. We might want to upgrade that, because I don't remember in Star Trek if they count up or count down. Sometimes they will, in real life, will count down. So it's something that's like like DEFCON 4 sometimes is less dangerous than DEFCON 1. So I think for the moment we're going to assume this is a bad set of gravitational waves, and they would have their most experienced pilot, which would be Commander Paulsen, taking the helm. And I think that makes sense. So in this case, we can't really use evasive actions, but I think we can. Let's just go and say that composure is a viable focus here. She's trying to stay calm in the face of a very heady navigational challenge. So let's go ahead and roll it and see what we get. Well, it doesn't matter about the focus because we got 2 successes, an 8 and an 8. And of course, the control con is a 14. We generate a momentum. And we have our 5th success, Commander Paulsen, doing very well on the day. And we see the Jemison basically riding these very... At this point, it would still be low kind of ripples in the pond. And this would be, again, a great opportunity to see the ship's shields being activated as the Jemison is trying to kind of smooth out her path over these intense gravitational waves that are literally rippling through space. And that would be where we leave off our first act. So in our next session, in our next episode, which I'm probably going to film here in the next 10 to 15 minutes, we will see the Jemison and whatever they choose to do to try and save this Malurian ship. Some big questions are still remaining. Are the Malurians going to be friendly? Are they going to be hostile? Is there something more going on than just a crashed ship? We know there's going to be some kind of infiltrator coming up. Is it having to do with the fleet exercises, or is it involved with the Malurians themselves? Stay tuned. Keep an eye out. This will likely go up tomorrow, so keep your eye out for that. In the meantime, I hope you all have an excellent day, and I will see you soon.